Hi, welcome. This is Sec 3 NA for Chapter 1. This is the second lesson. Alright. So, this lesson's objective is how to do factorization by grouping. Okay, factorization by grouping. Alright. So, now let us continue where we left off from the previous lesson, where we end off by factorization by taking out common factor. So the last example is similar to this. So if you look here, if I factorize for m bracket n plus 3 minus n open bracket n plus 3, what I realize is that the two brackets over here, right, they are basically the same. So the whole bracket is the common factor, right? So because of that, I factorize out this, the whole bracket n plus 3, what I am left with. So in this case, it's basically a division. I take the first term divided by the common factor, I get 4m. Take the second term divided by the common factor, I'll get negative n. Right, so this is an extension of the common factor. So what we're going to do today is factorization by grouping. You will look something like this. Now, so first and foremost, how do we identify factorization by grouping? Now, first of all, if you can see that there are 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is already a sign that, okay, you have to do by factorization by grouping. That's number 1. Second thing is, if you look at all the 4 terms, there is no common factor for all of them. Like if I say x, so first term there's x here, there's x here, but the last term there is no x. Right, so there is no common factor for all the 4 terms. So we'll do by factorization by grouping. Okay, what does it mean by grouping? There are 4 terms here. So I am going to group them 2 terms together. Right, so the first 2 term and the last 2 term. Right, and then what I'm going to do now is, if I just look at the first 2 term, x squared plus xy, right, both of them have a common factor. So I factorize out the common factor, which in this case is x. Right, factorization by common factor. And what I do with the next 2 term, I do the same. Okay, the next 2 term, I do the same. So basically, if I cover away this part here, right, the next 2 term, I factorize out. They have a common factor of 3, right? So this technique here is basically factorization by grouping. Right, so you can see 4 terms, I break out into first 2 term and then the third and the fourth term. Individually factorize them by taking out common factor, after which you will realize that, hey, this is actually quite similar to where we left off in the previous lesson. Okay, both of them have the common factor, which is the x plus y bracket. Okay, which I can then factorize out. Right, so basically if you think about factorization by grouping, it is basically factorization by taking common factor and we do it for 3 times. Okay, we do it for 3 times and we will get the result. Right, let us go through another example. So this one is another question. Quite similar, only difference is, okay, the only difference is over here is a negative sign. Right, both of these are negative sign instead of positive. Okay, the values they are the same. So this one, how do I do? Same thing. The first 2 term, x squared plus xy, I factorize them, I get x plus x open bracket x plus y. The third and fourth term, well, they have a common factor of 3, right? I factorize out 3. Now, inside the bracket now, we'll have negative x minus y. Okay, so how do I remember this? That, hey, how do I know whether the x is it negative or is it positive? Well, if I look at the last 2 term, the sign, they follow the sign. So like the 3x is a negative 3x. It's a negative 3x here, so it will follow. Negative 3y, so it will follow the negative sign. Alright. See, the previous example is a positive 3x, so it's a positive x. Positive 3y, so positive y. So it will follow. Now, if I look at back to this question here. Now, one bracket is x plus y. The other bracket is bracket negative x minus y. They are obviously not the same. Okay, but I can change the sign. If I change the sign, like negative x minus y, if I can change it to x plus y, then they will be the same, right? So this is what we're going to do the next step. What I'm doing here is I'm factorizing out negative 1, right? Or as a shortcut, you can think of it like in front of the bracket, the sign in front of the bracket, okay, this sign here, this positive sign in front of the bracket, you can think of it like a switch. When I switch it to negative sign, all the terms inside, all the plus and minus sign will invert. Right, a negative sign will becomes a positive. Negative sign will becomes a positive. Right, so once I do that, you realize that, hey, these two brackets now, they are the same again, and I factorize out. Okay, just a note here, when I factorize out on this step, okay, it is x minus 3. X minus 3. Alright, so this is basically the whole process of factorization by grouping.